Hello and welcome to Classic Vinyl Podcast. This is the podcast where we listen to and review songs and sometimes albums from the classic vinyl era of the 60s and 70s. I am one of your hosts, Justin, and not once again am I joined by Tyler, but today I've got a special co-host, my son, Austin.
Hey, happy to be here.
Yeah, and so today Tyler couldn't make it, so we decided we're just going to soldier on without him. And we decided to do one of Austin's favorite bands and a song from them, Steely Dan and Reelin' in the Years. We have covered Steely Dan, I believe, one time before we did their song Do It Again. I believe you were on that one too, Austin, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I'm a big Steely Dan guy, so I was on that song as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because even after listening to this song, for me, this is kind of funny, sitting down here in the basement studio and listening on a half-decent system instead of listening in the car or on my computer while I'm working or something. I've heard these songs hundreds of times, but when you hear them with the purpose of, kind of reviewing them and saying what you think, it's just amazing. You hear things that you wouldn't normally or you haven't in the past. And I guess we'll get to that in a minute. But since we have covered Steely Dan on here before, I'll just kind of give you a quick rundown of Steely Dan. They were formed in the early 1970s, basically around Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. They're two musicians and songwriters who, they built this group around their amazing sharp lyrics, unusual chord changes, especially at the time. And probably the one thing that really is associated with them is I had written down almost obsessive attention to detail, but there's nothing almost obsessive about it. They were very obsessive about detail to their songs and the recording process.
Yeah, there's a reason why they use their music to test high-end audio equipment, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I was talking about down here listening to this, is hearing the guitar and things down here in the basement studios just kind of brings it up to a new view for me. And I'm not the hugest Steely Dan fan, although I really do enjoy them, but I just haven't ever dove too deep into their albums like you have.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to them because it's a whole different ballpark. You wouldn't expect to hear someone mumbling under their breath or a mistake or something.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But they started working as a rock band, and they gradually after that became pretty much a studio project band, really, if you want to call them that. And they brought in a lot of top session musicians to get that exact sound that Steely Dan wanted, or Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, I should say, wanted. And they're really well known for the blended rock. Reelin' in the Years, the song we're doing today. Ricky, Don't Lose That Number in the 80s. Peg, Deacon Blues, obviously Do It Again. A ton of other songs, but I don't think you can really go anywhere on classic rock radio or, dare I say, by not getting my ass kicked by Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, but yacht rock radio, because they're very well known for that. And it's been stated many a times that they're not really that happy with being categorized that. And I get it because, they tried to do something different, but also at the same time, who cares? Yacht rock's good music too. Whatever you call it, good music's good music. But they sold almost 50 million albums worldwide. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001, and they have won Grammy for Album of the Year one time too as well for their album Two Against Nature. So do you want to get to the song review?
Yeah.
And now it's time for the song review.
Okay, so today we're doing Steely Dan and Reelin' in the Years. Let me give you a little history on this song. It was released on February 19th in 1973 in the U.S. on ABC Records. It was released on March 14th of 1973 in the U.K. on ABC Records as well. Still don't understand why they always do that, why they can't be released consecutively. Did they have to mail the tape over and it just took that long?
I was wondering the same thing. It's the same record label too, so I think it'd be a quick process.
Yeah, kind of strange, but the B-side of this song was actually the same in both the U.S. and the U.K., and it was Only a Fool Would Say That. Not a bad song there. And this song, Reelin' in the Years, is from the album Can't Buy a Thrill. And Can't Buy a Thrill, the album, reached number 17 on the U.S. Billboard Top 200 charts, number 38 in the U.K., and number 23 in Canada. The album itself has sold over 1 million copies in the U.S. and about 2.5 million copies worldwide. It is certified platinum by the RIAA here in the U.S. And this album's a big album. It's also known for the other song we covered, Do It Again, Dirty Work. Only a fool would say that. And I mean, this album is really kind of what established Steely Dan as a mainstream rock band in the early 70s. So this song was written by Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. Lead vocals are by Donald Fagen. And if we round out the musicians on this as it was recorded, Donald Fagen, of course, on lead vocals and electric piano, Walter Becker on bass, and Jeff Skunk Baxter on lead guitar, Denny Diaz on guitar, Jim Hodder on drums and backing vocals, David Palmer on backing vocals, and Elliot Randall, he does some of the lead guitar solos on this. So this was recorded in 1972 at the Village Recorder in Los Angeles and was produced by Gary Katz. Now, Gary Katz he's well known for producing a lot of things. Obviously, almost all of Steely Dan's work, and he's worked with a lot of other artists, Joe Cocker, Diana Ross, among a ton of others. This song is really, really well known for that. I guess it's a famous guitar solo because I love the guitar solo in this, and I've kind of forgot how much I like the guitar in this song. But Elliot Randall's guitar solo in this is really amazing, and it is ranked among rock's best guitar solos.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best parts about the song, and one of the things that really draws people in. And I think this is a great sound of the 70s. If I had to pick a song or an album that was a sound of the 70s, I think this would be near the top of the list for sure.
Well, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, the way they've arranged the rock, the jazz, the blues, and the pop, and you said it right up front, is the production value of these things is amazing. I think they're obviously they're well known for having very, very high production values, but this one sounds amazing. It really does. This is one of the songs that there is an album version and a single version. The album version runs about 4.5 minutes. The single version was cut down a little bit. They actually shortened portions of the instrumental section, and obviously if you listen to any of the live performances of this song, then they extend it out in big jam sessions, which sometimes that's even better that way.
Yeah, I much prefer the album version over the single version. I don't like that they cut out some of the instrumentals.
I think that's pretty much the case for me on everything. I mean, it was very common back in the 60s especially. I think in the 70s they started getting to where, okay, we're going to throw 7-8 minute songs on the radio and we don't care anymore. But especially in the 60s, they were big time into cutting things down to make it for radio. So this became one of Steely Dan's signature songs, still is to this day. I think there's not many people that don't know this song or haven't heard it, whether it be on radio or movies or TV or commercials or something. It's all over the place, but it really does reflect the band's jazz-influenced songwriting style and how they mix it so well with rock and blues and pop. And I don't know, I keep going back to the mixing of this song and the production of this song because that's really what sticks out to me. But a common misconception is this song was written about Bob Dylan because there is a lyric in the song referencing the past, and Donald Fagen and Walter Becker have repeatedly denied that interpretation of this song and said, no, it's about an ex-lover. So I don't know which one of their ex-lovers, but apparently one of them. So as far as the song's concerned, it did reach number 11 on the U.S. Billboard charts here in the U.S., number 62 in the U.K., and number 15 in Canada. And it has estimated worldwide single sales somewhere a little over 1 million copies. It does rank among the band's biggest hits alongside Do It Again, which is a song we've done on here. If you want to go check out that episode, Ricky, Don't Lose That Number, Peg, Hey 19. Those songs are all over the radio everywhere nowadays. Rightfully so. It does appear on a ton of their compilation albums, including A Decade of Steely Dan, Citizen Steely Dan, and they've got a ton of greatest hits albums, and this one hits all of them, of course.
It's interesting that you mentioned that it's all over the radio, because I've noticed that on social media. It seems like, quote unquote, yacht rock as a whole is kind of having a resurgence. And again, don't want to necessarily include that in it, but that's where it always is included. It's just interesting to see that resurgence on social media as well as the radio.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. And, I know there's a lot of people that don't like the term yacht rock, but honestly, let's say Sirius XM, when I'm in the car all the time, I turn to the yacht rock station, and I'm going to be honest, every song that comes on after the other is a really good song, but the genre that's so called yacht rock is so wide, and there's so many soft rock and harder rock, but really when I listen to that station, there's very few songs I don't like. It's just good music. And so I kind of get from the artist side why some of them don't like the term, but I think they're going to start liking it more because, like you said, there's a resurgence in the popularity of it, and that's obviously going to pay them a lot more money as well.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why they don't necessarily like being lumped in with the yacht rock genre per se is because I think that a lot of their catalog and discography goes a lot deeper than that. Sure, a lot of their hits may be considered yacht rockish, but a lot of their other music is, I think, a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, and I mean, yacht rock's so broad anyways. I mean, what does it really mean? I mean, it's, I guess, some disc jockey deciding what fits into that category or not. And the unfortunate part, or the fortunate part, however you want to say it, is Steely Dan is one of the leading examples of what we consider yacht rock. You know, Steely Dan, Toto, Michael McDonald, those kind of things, you know, those are big. So, but this song's been covered by a ton of artists. You've got Joan Jett has a version, Ricky Lee Jones, and there's a ton of other bands that have covers of this. But I would say Joan Jett is probably the most popular cover of this song, but I don't think anything can really beat the original on this one. I mean, it's definitely one of the bigger songs of the 70s. I think even though it's chart success, it wasn't a number one hit. I think it's probably more well known today than it was almost in the 70s in a way, because, and I think that kind of goes back to the production. I think the production is so well, it just as easily could have been recorded today as it was 50 years ago.
It's interesting you mentioned that because kind of tying into that, there's actually no released demo version that's available, which is kind of interesting, but I sometimes think maybe it's kind of a good thing, right? This song is as close to perfection as they could get it. Maybe that's all we want to hear from it, right? Maybe we don't want to hear these outtakes or these demos.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for the bands I really love, I mean, obviously, if you've listened to this podcast, you know the Beatles are huge for me. I love the Doors and Led Zeppelin and the Who and those kind of bands, and I love hearing the demos. And in fact, in some cases with those bands, the demos are better than the finished song. But I guess as big a perfectionists as these guys were, maybe they don't want that out there.
I'm also wondering how many of those exist compared to some of those other bands because they were perfectionists.
Well, that's true. Maybe they didn't, you know, they just simply don't exist. Maybe they kept writing over it and they didn't want them to exist.
Yeah, because I've heard stories of crazy long studio sessions with these guys where they tried things over and over and over until they got it perfect.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But I mean, this song definitely helped establish Steely Dan's reputation for their amazing songwriting. I mean, what you would want to call their meticulous musicianship and studio perfectionism. And they've influenced a ton of rock and pop artists from the 70s on. They still are today, obviously. One funny thing is I always kind of say where a song may have fell on Rolling Stone's top 500 list. This isn't my favorite Steely Dan song, but it blows me away that it's never appeared on one of Rolling Stone's top 500 lists, because this is a pretty damn good song and kind of one of the songs that broke these guys in. So it kind of surprises me that it didn't appear there, but it has appeared on a ton of films, a ton of television series, documentaries, video games. It's obviously all over classic rock radio, and it's one of their most recognizable recordings. So as far as the song goes, we were talking about the guitar solo, and it's really been considered by a lot of people one of the greatest debut album moments in rock and roll history. You've got the guitar solo that's by Elliot Randall, and the funny thing about him is he wasn't even a full-time member of this band, yet he delivered what Jimmy Page has even called his favorite ever guitar solo.
I think that's the weird thing about Steely Dan, but also kind of the cool thing is all these big songs, a lot of what made them, those members weren't actual group members. They were just session musicians that they pulled into the studio.
Do you think that comes from Fagen and Becker's like perfectionism, that they got the best guys they can come in here? They don't want any opinions. They just want people that know how to play and do exactly what they say.
Yeah, I think that's a big portion of it, because from what I've heard is they would go through session musicians like crazy. If someone wasn't getting the sound that they wanted, on to the next guy.
Well, and that's the problem you have when you're a band, right? I mean, everybody's got to contribute, and you can fight among yourselves and do that. But if you're the ones employing the session musicians and they're not doing what you want, bring some other ones in. And that's what I've heard with them too, is they were very meticulous with it and not very kind to a lot of the session musicians because they didn't do what they wanted. And so, but I guess you can't argue with their success.
Yeah, it seems like if you made it on a Steely Dan song, you were kind of the cream of the crop in their eyes, at least.
Yeah. But even on their very first album, you know, the funny thing about Steely Dan in the early 70s is they did sound different from every other band at the time. And that's mainly because they were blending that jazz harmony, the poppy hooks, because that's the funny thing about their songs, as technical as they are, they have really good hooks in them, and they bring you into the song. A lot of bluesy guitar. The lyrics are amazing in most of their songs, and that just really became their trademark sound.
Yeah, and I think the vocals also add a lot to it, right? You hear a Steely Dan song and you know who's singing.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say it's the best vocal in the world. It's not horrible or bad or even a tiny bit bad, but you're right. You recognize it as Steely Dan, but it just fits perfect. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a different thing when I hear it. Even if it's a song I don't know very well, you can tell it's Steely Dan, but it's got an interesting vocal, and it definitely makes the song. I think the thing that we've said it numerous times already, but the production in this song, just how clean it is and how crisp it is. And we're talking like 50 plus years ago, and they were doing this, and you pull a lot of that music from that time, and it's not like this at all. It really isn't. I mean, the production values in the early 70s had taken a lot of steps and leaps from what they were in the 60s, but Steely Dan just took it to a whole new level. So, Austin, I know you're very familiar with Steely Dan. Obviously, like you said up front, you're a huge Steely Dan nerd and all that stuff. But after listening to Reeling in the Years down here in the basement studio with the purpose of rating and reviewing it, what are your thoughts on this song?
Like you said earlier, when you listen to it with the intention of reviewing it, I think you listen to it in a different way. And that's definitely what happened with me today. That guitar got me. I love that guitar. I think it makes the song beautiful. And overall, I think it's a very easy listening song. I think it's a great song. I think it's a great intro to Steely Dan if you were new to Steely Dan. I think it's a great song that kind of showcases the 70s.
You know, and I don't really think it showcases the 70s as much as showcases Steely Dan in a way, because I listen to I'm a huge Grand Funk Railroad guy too. And what they were doing at this time was pure rock and roll, but it just didn't sound clean and crisp like this. And that's what amazes me listening down here in the studio, is how crisp it is. And you're right, the guitar hits, but it hits different than I've ever listened to this song before. I think this is a perfect headphone song, good set of headphone song, because it's got so good a production value. And I keep saying crisp and clean, but that's just what it sounds. It's crisp and clean.
You don't hear any hesitation, any weird echoes, anything off in the song. I feel like it's a song that you could listen to 100 times over and not find any flaw. Whereas that can't be said for all music, even some of the best music of all time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, sitting down here listening to it, the thing that got me right off the bat, even though I've heard this song hundreds and hundreds of times, is that opening riff and the tone that guitar gives. And I'm a guitar guy, you know, I play guitar. I mean, I'm a bedroom superstar, but the tone on the guitar to me in this thing is the best thing about the whole song. It does have great bass. It has great drums. I mean, there isn't anything they've overlooked in this, obviously being the perfectionists they are, but the little guitar riffs in the verses are amazing. And the guitar solo, my hell. I mean, I never knew it was that good. I really didn't. I've never sat down here and listened to it like this and heard this song the way I did today.
I think that opening guitar riff, I like that you bring that up, because I think that's one of those where you could hear the first note of it and probably know what it was.
Yes, no doubt. I think also the electric piano works really well in this. It's kind of subtle, and I'm not a guy that tends to like a ton of piano in songs unless it's used right, and I think it's used perfectly in this. It mixes in perfect, because sometimes, you get a lot of heavier guitar, and this guitar isn't heavy. I don't know how to explain the guitar in this. It's just got a good crisp tone. The tone is just perfect on it. And sometimes people will do that, and then you throw in too much piano or whatever other instrument it is, and it kind of downgrades it, but it doesn't in this one. It seems to mix really well.
Yeah, and I think, like we've said a ton before, I think that's what they were excellent at, right? They were excellent at that production of it. They obviously use pianos a lot in their other songs, but I think this is a song where guitar kind of takes the forefront, but that piano is still in there and it's still doing work for the song.
So one thing we got to talk about, and we don't have Tyler here to decipher the lyrics like he always does. And if you've listened to this podcast, Tyler takes those lyrics into places no one else can. But this song apparently is really written. It's a sarcastic reflection on a former relationship and an ex. I don't know if that's a Fagan or Becker or if it's written in something else they'd noticed, but it apparently is a reflection on a former relationship, and it's criticizing superficiality. It's criticizing self-importance and living in the past while questioning another person's priorities and perspective. So I'm taking it that relationship didn't do too well.
Sure sounds like it. I think Steely Dan has some great lyrics, but for me, I think this song, the lyrics are obviously there, but I don't pay attention to it as much as I do on other songs. The guitar definitely takes kind of first priority for me in a way.
Well, and Tyler's the one that's always made me notice songs that I've listened to for years and years and never really, I know the lyrics, but I haven't really deciphered them and thought, what do they mean? Because I've always been of the thought that they probably don't mean what it sounds like they mean anyways, because so many lyrics are just reflective of something or they're hiding something. So, there are songs that are pretty straightforward about love or about hate or whatever they're about, but I figure most of the writers they hide a lot in it. So I don't look into them as deep as Tyler does, but he sure does a good job at looking into lyrics. So do you want to get to the song rating?
Yeah.
Song rating.
So I'm going to try and fill in for Tyler here, but if you've listened to our podcast before, our rating system is pretty simple. It's 0 to 10, 10 being the best. And I think I'm going to kick it over to Austin, the guy that wouldn't know a diamond if he held it in his hand. I'm going to see what his rating on this song is.
I'd have to put this as a 10. I think especially for production value, this is a great song. I think it's some of the top of the line for not just Steely Dan, but just songs of that genre and that generation. Overall, I think it's a great song. What about you?
I can't rate it quite as high as you, but I will tell you this much. I probably just, if somebody would have asked me, what would you rate Steely Dan's Reeling in the Years out of 10 before we sat down here and listened to it? And keep in mind, I've heard it hundreds of times. I probably would have said a 7. But after listening to it and hearing that guitar and hearing that tone and really listening to it for the first time, because like I said, I'm not a Steely Dan guy, so I haven't really thrown their albums on a ton. I just hear them in passing. But I think this is going to change it for me a little. I think I'm going to have to take your lead, Austin, and maybe dive into some of their albums. I don't know why I haven't, probably because I've got too many other favorite bands, but I'd rate this song a 9. I think this is a very strong song. I'm very, very impressed with the guitar and the tone from that guitar. And I've said that about 75 times now, but the production value, that's another thing I've said about 75 times in this episode. But this is an amazing song, and it does make me want to visit because, like I was telling you, all those songs that are on this album, they're really good songs. And I feel kind of ashamed that I haven't really looked into the other ones. So
I think this is a perfect album to just set on and go on a drive when the sun's setting. It's the perfect vibe for this album, and I think it helps you really appreciate it.
Just don't call it yacht rock, right?
Exactly.
So that's Steely Dan and Reeling in the Years. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, would like to tell us what you think of our ratings or tell us what you would rate it, please send us an email at classicvinylpodcast@gmail.com. You can also send any song or album requests there as well. And we wish Tyler a speedy recovery, and hopefully we'll see him back here next week. But like always, we appreciate you taking your time to listen. So until next time, see you later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.